Welcome to Coaching in Session,
where limits end and growth begins.
Hosted by Michael Rearden.
This is your space to challenge the ordinary,
unlock your potential,
and step boldly into your next chapter.
Your mindset journey continues.
Welcome everyone, 700 of the podcast Coaching in Session. We are making our way to episode 1000 and we're just kind of cooking, and episode 700 feels just like another episode to me. It's just what we are meant to do. And today is going to be the perfect opportunity for people to realize that what they're doing or who they're becoming can just be a whole play into whole aspect of their life. Because at one point, I thought about being a podcaster or starting a podcast, and I said, oh, it'll be nice. And I thought about having people in my life that can help me so I can have a support system. But then I said, I don't need support in order to do something like a podcast. Even though I didn't know how to start a podcast, even though I knew nothing about audio, even though I knew nothing about video. I mean, I made so many mistakes along the way. And of course, I had good people in my life that helped me mitigate some of the mistakes that I would have made. There was still a lot of learning that had to happen. So the identity that I had given myself, especially before starting the podcast or before starting out in life, was very reminiscent of my past. And I think back when I was developing, when I was a teenager, when I was a young adult, and now even as an adult, maybe in my midlife area. Now, of course, I haven't had a midlife crisis yet, but maybe one day I will. Maybe there will be something that just sets me off the edge and I just lose focus, I lose direction, I lose my drive, I just lose the willpower. All of this is to say that these different areas can sometimes be construed as our identity. Because when I was young, the identity that I had was maybe of a boy who was kind, maybe of a brother who was protective, maybe of a son who was supportive to their parents for being able to do what they could do, even though for other people it might not have been enough. Perhaps when I was in my teen years, thinking about the ego and the aspects of being disciplined and the aspect of being determined and being driven and being stubborn, and I'm still stubborn to this day. So maybe I kept that idea from the teen years. And going back to even when I was a kid, my parents would say I was stubborn quite a bit. Then I go into my knees, and it felt like everything that I have been building, I started to just break down piece by piece. And I said, let me just start over, start anew, start fresh. So there was a lot of mindsets that had to be created. There was a lot of identity shifts that had to happen. And this was this idea that began everything for me in my 20s, this identity shift, where just because I became someone doesn't mean I decided to stay that somebody. Sometimes in life, we stay a person for a bit too long. We develop an identity of someone who might not be as strong, who might not be as enthusiastic, or who might not be as driven. And we allow this person to rule our life for more than what they should be allotted. They go past the terms of their presidency. So in the terms of identity shift, we have to begin to look at, well, what is that and how can it help me? Well, here we have a TOS Part 78, The Hidden Key to Mastery and Sustained Success. In this article, I'm talking about what you need to do in order for an identity shift to occur, but then for that identity shift also to be meaningful. Now, if you are new to the podcast or new to the blogs, which what we have here at Reven Concepts, TUS series are for people who have strong mindsets already. So if you have a growth mindset, maybe you have been listening for a long time to the podcast, or maybe you are a coach yourself, guess what? All of this information here is going to help you elevate your identity game. Now, why should you elevate your identity game? I think it's important to know who you are. I think it's important to know what you want to do before it's done. Because if we just kind of allowed the wind to sway us left and right, then we wouldn't need to do anything in our day. We will wake up, and if we had the urge to get up, we would. If we had the idea to do something, it would be more than just an idea. It would also be an action. Sometimes people, they will give themselves this idea of things that they have to do because they must do them, and things that they do because they need to do them. Well, what about the things that you can do? Because you can be amazing. You can be powerful. You can be someone who, when you look back in 10, 20 years, you're like, whoa, that person is someone I'm proud of. Because I can look back when I was 7. I can look back at that boy and I can say, I'm proud of him. I can look back at my teen years and I can say, I'm proud of him. Of course, there's a lot of conversations I would have had with him, but I can say I'm proud of him. And I can look back at my 20s and I can say I'm proud of him for the change that he wanted to do. And then I'm in my season now when I'm 30, being able to say, okay, what do I need to be at 45 or 47 or whatever it be? When I look back in 10 years to say that I'm proud of myself, what would that identity look like? Well, only you can decide what that is for you. But in order for you to understand and have some direction, we need to take a quick look at these 4 steps that are in this article. Now, the 4 areas of identity evolution that define sustained transformation are going to be number 1, recognition, 2, redefinition, 3, recalibration, and 4, reinforcement. All of these are going to be, in a sense, a magic formula to not only for you to take a hold of your identity shift, but for you to also truly make it yours and to truly make it something where it's pronounced. Meaning, you're not just saying, oh, I made a couple of changes and it was okay, it was good enough. I'm talking about it was profound, where it was like, whoa, like this changed everything. Think of it in the terms of if you had to save someone's life and you did the work beforehand to go get training in first aid and CPR and AED, where you're like, I'm equipped to save someone's life. Now, I'm not saying that every day that you wake up, you're like, okay, I hope someone gets hurt where I can save their life. You're just equipped for it. There might come a time when you might need those skills. You want to be the person that says, I did the work in order for this moment. That's powerful. So the identity sometimes is you're preparing yourself for the show. You're preparing yourself for the presentation. When you're on stage, when the world is looking at you, when all eyes are glued and fixated on everything you do, can you say that you're truly there? Can you say that you're the person that is the person that people are going to look at and say, wow, how did you do it? That will be a good, strong identity shift. Well, let's start to break down these areas, because I think once we break down these areas, we're going to get a good understanding of how we can evolve into a better, stronger identity. And then maybe we can even look at the end of everything of why it's important. Because one of the things you might be asking yourself of, why would I want to change my identity if you already like who you are? Well, I liked who I was when I was a teen, but then when I look back, I think about how egotistic I was. I think about how unaware I was. I think about how difficult I was, and all of these aspects do not help me become the person that I envision myself for the future. So there's different aspects that I can look back at and say, you know what, even though I was this type of person, it doesn't mean I have to stay this type of person. So I decided to shift my identity, but I can still say the things in the life that I was living, even though there were some things maybe I would regret to some degree, or I might say I would do things different today. It doesn't mean that I don't own it. It doesn't mean that I don't appreciate it, because it allowed me to be who I am today. Some people, they just say, oh, when I was that person, I just dislike that person. I'm ashamed of that person. Well, then you have to do the healing. You have to accept that person, because that person allows you to be who you are right now. Now, when we look at number 1, recognition, is basically exposing an outdated identity that you're currently living. Very similar to how I was just saying, how I was when I was a teen. That outdated way of living or being identified as wasn't helpful. Now, let's bring it into the real world today of what's going to happen. Of course, this is maybe speculation. Maybe it's theory. Maybe it's a hypothesis, or whatever you want to consider it. Maybe it's not reality, but I'm going to share how the mind works and how the mind evolves. Well, the mind is going to think a certain way today. Think of it as when cars first came out, they didn't have ACs or wiper blades or heaters or cassette tapes or CD players. And eventually, the cars started to evolve to have all of these things. One of the first things that they would have for entertainment was a cassette tape. And people would have all of these cassette tapes, and they would get all of these cassette tapes, and they would say, and the kids would be like, okay, I want these cassette tapes, and they'll stock up. They'll go to FYE, and this is basically for your entertainment. It was a record store where people will get records and cassette tapes, and then moving on to CDs. So all of these things that have been in the past of CDs, records, cassette tapes, those things are obsolete today. Not saying that people don't enjoy CDs anymore or they don't have record players, but the reality is most of the music that is being listened to is being streamed, is being put on an FM transmitter, and they're watching or they're listening things wirelessly. We have come a long way from our initial forms of entertainment. In a sense, the identity of your music collection, or of you being a music collector, you can now say like, okay, well, in the beginning I was doing this. I remember I had 2 or 3 binders of CDs because my dad, he had all of these CDs, and he had a 6-disc CD player in his car. So you could put up the 6 CDs instead of having to put a CD in and pop it out. Computers would have DVD burners where you could burn DVDs or burn CDs. And now all of these things are obsolete. But then again, we need to have those moments. We need to have that moment where we were hoarders in CDs or in DVDs, and we will have a whole collection of things, to now we just have everything digitally and wirelessly. Of course, there could be a next stage to that. I don't know what it is, but I have to understand that the outdated form of cassette players or the outdated form of CDs is outdated. It's not relevant any longer. So for me to purposely put my mind in there, either A, I would have to be a connoisseur of what I was doing, meaning it would be a hobby. For example, people have record players because they think that the record vinyl sounds better than the current electronic music that's coming out today. Now, there's a wisp to it. There's a sound to it. And that can be pleasing to yourself. So I can understand how people say that records are better than the music that comes out today. But then there could be a person that says, I just enjoy the simplicity of listening to this, and to have something that's microly better or worse is not really worth my time. So there's going to be people who create an identity for this, meaning that they are going to be collectors. And there's going to be people who can care less about this aspect. But there is this idea of cassette players and CD players and DVD players are outdated. So we have to understand, if we have an identity that's outdated, what do we do about it? How do we get rid of it? And it leads us to our next step, right? We have to look at redefinition. This is going to be the idea of designing the future identity that aligns with our highest potential. This area is going to be maybe one of the more challenging ones, because once we identify like what we want to do, we have to create the blueprint. In a sense, this is the fantasy of who we want to become. I think of the hero and the villain quite a bit. Like, do you want to be the hero or do you want to be the villain? Most people in their life and in the world, they want to be the hero. And then I ask, why? Why do you want to be the hero? Why do you feel as if the hero's journey is your journey? Because they seek validation, because they will do all of these things that might make them more happy in their own skin. They feel as if they're bringing some level of good to the world. So the idea of being a hero is more of a prominent figure in their life or in their mind. And of course, I want people to be in alignment with who they are. But in the sense of more people being heroes and villains today, I think more people want to be villains. And I'm 100% honest. I believe that I would rather be a villain than a hero. Even though I'm doing all of these things that are very hero-like, our world can shift what a hero is very simply. Think of during the pandemic when people were having to get the vaccines and quarantines, and they would call people who wore their mask a hero, or they would get a vaccine a hero. And then again, I would think in my mind, like, to be a hero with that simplistic way of thinking, how many people will fall into that idea of, I want to be a hero, so let me do this. I said, whoa, the mind is so easily manipulated, not because of a choice or decision that you get to make or that was influenced upon you, but the idea of, if you want to design your future self, what does that look like? I don't think my future self will be easily corralled by the words of the masses for them to say that I should be doing something. I don't believe that's what a hero should be. Because if everyone is yelling at the hero to do something and the hero does it, so the hero has no free right? Do they have no autonomy? And if they said no to the people, would they be thrown away and considered a villain? It's a mindset, right? where now we're thinking, are we truly the villain now? Because if we don't do what's in alignment with everyone else, if we just try to fit in the mold, of course, we can easily be looked at as the hero, right? Because it's easy to see. But then the moment when we start to challenge not only ourselves, but the world, people are going to look at you in a negative light. They're going to say, why are you trying to change me? Why are you trying to enhance me? Why are you trying to make the world a better place when I'm okay with just enough? Well, some people are going to be okay with just enough. Some people are going to be okay with their mindset. Some people are going to be okay with their behavior. Some people are going to be okay in their environment. Some people are going to be okay with their standards that they have right now. Some people are going to be okay with the level of impact that they have right now. All of these things that I talk about in this article are there. But then again, we can redefine that. We can say, hey, I want something different. I want to be better than what is allotted or what is the standard. We redefine what that is. Now, when we start to look at number 3, the recalibration aspect, where we are looking at our identity and we're looking at our willpower and we're looking at our alignment and we're basically looking at everything that we're doing and we're seeing if it's in alignment with who we think we're becoming. Because if maybe we are going to that idea of being a hero again, and then we could use parents and we could use any example, where if we wanted to be a hero, what would be the things in alignment with what a hero is? Do they listen? Are they affectionate? Are they brave? Are they courageous? Are they disciplined? Like, we need to have all of those things in alignment before we can say that this new identity is solidified. Because if a hero is courageous, then does that leave this room for if we were not courageous, or if we weren't brave, or if we were afraid more often than we were courageous or brave, then should we say that we are a hero yet? Sometimes we can say, well, I'm only going to look at the things that I am courageous in rather than in all aspects of what courage can be. Because you can be courageous in your marriage, you can be courageous in your job, but then maybe the moment you have opposition, maybe you don't find true courage. Maybe you find conformity. So there's aspects to what is happening in that identity where it's not in alignment with who you thought you were. You're basically making certain rules for certain areas, and what it has to be, almost in a sense, is across the board. I'm going to be powerful. I'm going to be courageous. I'm going to be grateful. You're not going to just be grateful for all the good things in your life. You are going to also be grateful for the bad things in your life. As much as you might say, oh, I just want more good things than bad things. Of course, I want you to have more good things than bad things. But the reality is there's a yin and a yang in life, right? We can't appreciate the good without understanding the bad. Imagine how it would feel is if you were always full. You were always full. You never felt hungry. Well, you would just eat, 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 eat. You never gave yourself a chance to feel hungry. Well, number one, maybe you would get fat, right? But let's say that you won't get fat. You would never truly feel what it means like to be hungry. And I remember I had this guest on the podcast. He said his grandfather and him, or his father-in-law or grandfather-in-law, had a conversation. And the grandfather basically came in with a hard line as soon as they basically started their conversation was, I can't remember the last time I was hungry, like truly hungry. And it brought about an idea, to my mind at least, of when was the last time I was hungry? Of course, I can say, it's been 6 hours since I last ate, or 12 hours since I last ate, or maybe 18 hours since I last ate. And I can have all of these hunger receptives going on and triggers in my mind saying, hey, you need to get some food, even though I don't need it. It's just that I want it, right? It's time to eat, right? The Pavlov and the bell with the dogs, and the dog starts drooling, right? In a sense, my brain is like, ding, it's time for dinner. Ding, it's time for lunch. Ding, it's time for breakfast. Whatever time of day it is, you are just giving these cues of you should eat, even though you might not be hungry. You might not be paying attention to if you truly even want to eat. Maybe you just eat because of habit. And so many people do it because of habit, and they gain weight because of their habits. And they realize that they're becoming a person that they didn't want to become. And it's hard to change that person. So sometimes you have to look at recalibrating your diet or recalibrating what you're doing, because if you are slowly becoming a person that you don't want to become, you have a choice to change it. And it doesn't have to be a big change. It could be a small shift. A plane that is heading to a destination, if the wind pulls the plane to the right a little bit, if they don't correct their course, they're going to end up in a totally different direction or location. This means that we have to do the recalibration constantly in our life. I'm not saying it has to be every single day, but we need to be aware of what is happening. Now, in the article, I am talking about we create these daily micro commitments that we are going to be paying attention to the aspects of our life. I wouldn't want you to do something for an hour, and then after you're done in that hour, I say, yeah, everything you did was no good. You have to redo it. And then so you're thinking in your head, I just wasted an hour of my life. Now imagine that being a day. Imagine that being a week. Imagine that being a month or a year or a lifetime. It's not worth it. So you have to look at each day in the sense, at the end of the day, all right, was I in alignment? Was I doing what I had to do? Is everything working out in my favor, right? We're looking at, are the things we are doing or the things that we have done going to lead us or have a high probability of leading us to a new identity shift? And if not, we need to start to make some changes. Now, once we have done all the work, once we have developed all of these 3 previous steps, we need to reinforce what we're doing. Of course, the discipline, of course, repetitive nature, we need to reinforce this. Now, when we do this, it's about protecting our growth. Because if we just do something to a goal, it doesn't mean that it's protected. The easiest way I like to present this is, or as, if you want to lose some weight to fit into a dress or to fit into a suit because you have a wedding or something along those lines, the goal is to reach this weight. The goal is not to reach this lifestyle. So when you hear people say, oh, I have to fit into my wedding dress. Oh, I have to fit into my suit. Oh, I have to fit into these pants or something along these lines for this event, right? Guess what? It's not, I want to change my lifestyle so I can do this. I want to be able to run marathons. I want to be able to do this long term, right? You can do that. And then, of course, the attire that comes along with your decision is in alignment with the identity that you want to create. Because it's not a true identity if you're just saying that you want to do something for a moment. Anyone can say they want to do something for a moment. It doesn't mean that you are that person. It's very similar to how if you are a very nice person when everyone is looking on Thanksgiving, you're going out and you're saying, hey, everyone, I'm going to give you some free food. And on Christmas, I'm going to give you free presents. And then every single day of the year, you're the Grinch. Can you say that those 2 days of the year truly made you grateful, or those 2 days out of the year truly made you aware of what was happening and that you're a changed person, now you're this new identity of caring and loving people? No, you have to be more consistent in it. It's almost like every single day you're doing it. Now, if you are being consistent and maybe you're just starting off 2 days a year, and then next year is 3, and then 4, and then 5, and before you know it, in 365 years, maybe you're that person. But we don't have that long to wait. It is easy to look at in the sense of a day that we can do something or a year that we can do something. Many people that give themselves of the new year, new me, and imagine just how many years you need to get to the you that you're trying to get to. This idea of the identity shift is helping people understand the identity that you want to create can happen, but there has to be a formula presented and in place for you to allow it to occur. Now, we can look at it in decades, which I prefer, because we can easily see how we have evolved. It is more challenging to see ourselves evolve day by day or week by week or month by month. We can do so by pictures or by getting coaches or getting family members to pay maybe more attention to in our life. But the reality is most people are just going to be absent and they're only going to see big changes. They're going to see dramatic changes. And then the moment you kind of slip a little bit, they're going to not necessarily even see that because the span or the breadth of your change is going to be plausible for most people. If you're 300 pounds and now you're 90 pounds, that's a big change. I'm going to be looking at like, whoa, I can't believe you did this. But if you are 200 pounds and you're now 180 and then now you're 190, I'm going to see that yo-yo, and any change that you do is going to be challenging for me to understand. That identity that you're trying to create is going to be an area rather than a destination or a location. So there's going to be aspects to what a person can do or can implement in order to gain and to start to attack an identity shift. Of course, we want the identity shifts to be positive. Of course, we want the identity shifts to be something that's more pronounced in your life. But if you don't want to change, then don't change. If you don't want to change, then you won't change. Most people, they're just going to find a nice person or place in life, and they're just going to allow themselves to have an identity of a boat that's tied down at the harbor or tied down at the bay or tied down at the docks. And the water will rise and the water will lower and the waves will come and the storms will come and the boat's still tied, but the boat's not moving. The boat's not getting anywhere. It's not traveling. It's not getting to destinations. It's not seeing the world. It's just stuck. It's just there. It's just existing. Well, most people, when they're looking for an identity shift, they're looking for something more pronounced. They're looking to be that figurative boat, but now that boat not tied to the docks, but now exploring the different parts of the ocean, different parts of the world. And in this article, when we start to look at it, this TOS Part 78, Identity Shift, the hidden key to mastery and sustained success. I didn't talk about the idea of success so much in this podcast episode because it's not necessary. In the article, I talk about success quite a bit. If you want to understand success and what the identity shift is for what you have to do in order to get success or be successful, check this out. But I do want you to understand that success is going to be extremely private. It's going to be extremely individualized because what success is for me might not be success for you. So it's important that you understand that these areas of identity shifting are going to be helping you get into the area that you want to get into. But you have to be able to define that. So you got to do the work. Once more for people so they understand the 4 areas is going to be 1, recognition, 2, redefinition, 3, recalibration, and 4, reinforcement. Of course, the link right down below is going to lead you to the article, lead you to the blog, where you can not only look at these steps if you don't have a pen and pad right now, but you can look at how each step is going to be broken down. Meaning, if you want to work on one area more than the other, or work on all 4 areas maybe equally or appropriately, you have all of that here in this article. And again, this is going to be for people who have growth mindsets, people who are already ready for the identity shift that they're looking for, the transformation that they're looking for. They want success, they want growth, they want happiness, they want love, they want the goodness, right? For the people who are just kind of coasting and getting and taking what they get, kind of like, I'm just going to a restaurant and they just serve me whatever. That could be cool for a bit. But in life, if I said that I'm going to give you everything that you don't want, but you're going to have a lot of things, would you say that this will be the life for you? Maybe. Some people will say, as long as I'm fed, as long as I'm clothed, as long as I'm given an easy path. But then again, down the road, can we say that you truly lived? Can we say that your life is not going to be full of regret because of all the opportunities that you have given up? Identity is about identifying who you want to be, who you want to become, and then allowing yourself to become that person, transforming yourself into that person. We all think of ourselves as a certain person. My son, 3 years old, I'm Nathaniel, right? He's saying his name. I'm this person. That's his identity forming. And then he's going to start to say, I'm brave, I'm courageous, I'm powerful, my daughter, I'm beautiful, I'm smart, I'm wise. All of these things can lead to a strong identity. Of course, if you are a person that has not had a good upbringing, maybe you can look back at these identity shifts in your life and say, I was weak then, but now I'm stronger now. I'm getting stronger, right? You can look at the trends of your identity. Maybe you can look back at a part of your life where you said, I was stronger then than I am now. Now you know that the shifting that you're doing might not be the shifting that's going to be something you want to continue. So you make the changes. All of this is for you to truly identify if you are on the right path, if you are becoming the person that you want to become. And if not, you can create that identity shift. It might not be easy, it might not be overnight, but it will be yours. So dive in, learn more about yourself, explore who you were, and explore who you want to be, because the identity that you are still becoming is always going to be present in your mind.